Alright, hello everybody. Welcome to our next kind of mini unit here. We're going to be taking a look at the age of Napoleon. So today, we're going to start talking about Napoleon and take a look at how he was as a new leader in France. So our objectives and standards: to explain how France gained a new leader and to understand changes that occurred in France following the French Revolution. And please take a moment there to look over the standards if you would, please. And our desired result: what changes occurred under new leadership in France? Okay, so the early life of Napoleon Bonaparte, you'll see an early picture of Napoleon Bonaparte here as a younger man. So on August 15, 1769, Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Corsica, which was a French-run island in the Mediterranean Sea. Now, he was sent to France at the age of 9 to be trained for a military career. Now, the outbreak of the French Revolution saw a young Napoleon Bonaparte looking to achieve greatness. Now, Napoleon was a lieutenant who favored the Jacobins, like we talked about in the French Revolution before. Those were more of the radical individuals during the French Revolution. People like Maximilien Robespierre and people like that we've already talked about. And Napoleon was in favor of them. He was also in favor of a republic, not a monarchy, but he also struggled with a lot of the views and the ideas of the French Revolution as well, and we'll see that change as he becomes a leader in France. So the success of Napoleon. The turmoil of the French Revolution saw Napoleon begin to rise in the military. In December 1793, Napoleon drove British forces out of the French port in Toulon, and Napoleon also won many victories against the Austrians and captured most of northern Italy. In 1798, Napoleon led an expedition to Egypt, where he didn't have a lot of success. He hid many of his failures from the people in France, so the people of France thought he was doing a lot of good and having a lot of success, but he hides a lot of his failures in Egypt, and this is going to continue to allow him to rise to a popular figure in France as well. Now, Napoleon moved from successful general to political leader by 1799. He helped overthrow the weak directory. Remember, the people grew tired of the directory, didn't think they were doing a good job, and he helped set up a three-man board known as the consulate. So people were upset with the weak directory, and this consulate comes into power. Napoleon's a part of that, and a new constitution will be written, but Napoleon took the title of first consulate and kind of kept all the power for himself, really. So an emperor in France. In 1800, Napoleon forced Spain to return Louisiana territory to France, and Napoleon named himself consul for life in 1802. On December 2nd, 1804, Napoleon will actually crown himself Emperor of France. He actually took the crown from the Pope and crowned himself Emperor, showing how powerful he was and felt that he didn't need the Pope to do that. Another thing that Napoleon did was he used the popular votes by ballot, or plebiscite, to help him rise to power. So what this meant that each time there was a popular vote, the French people supported him and his policies. So Napoleon begins to grow more and more in power and strength because of this. And this picture here is a picture of Napoleon in his emperor garb and things like that, in his emperor clothing that I believe he was kind of sworn in or made emperor in. So reforming France. Working to reform France, Napoleon strengthened the central government. Remember that people during the French Revolution wanted a weak central government. Napoleon's going to change that. He's going to bring back a strong central government, a strong government. Also, in order to restore the economy, Napoleon took control of prices. He encouraged new industry and built roads and canals. Now, public schools were also established under strict government control to create well-trained officials and military leaders. And Napoleon also moved away from the French Revolution in one example, such as establishing communication with the Catholic Church again. This was known as the Concordat of 1801, which placed the Catholic Church under state control or under government control, but it also recognized religious freedoms of Catholics. So remember, during the French Revolution, people kind of moved away from religion and the power of the church, and Napoleon's going to kind of work out an agreement between the French government and the Catholic Church to come back into play a little bit. Some other reforms in France, or reforming France. Rights to land were restored for peasants from the church and nobles, so land that was owned by nobles in the church was given to peasants. Émigrés, or those who had fled during the French Revolution, were allowed to return to France if they pledged loyalty. Jobs were open to all people regardless of their social class or regardless of social or class standing. And Napoleon also established a new set of laws known as the Napoleonic Code. Now, the Napoleonic Code allowed for Enlightenment ideas such as freedom and equality, and also abolished the feudal system. But it wasn't all good. In a lot of cases, it removed the rights of women and actually placed men more in control of their homes and of society. So we're going to see women in France kind of lose some rights and some equality under the Napoleonic Code, but either way, we do see the Napoleonic Code, sorry about mispronouncing it, the Napoleonic Code there, begin to bring about a lot of rights and freedom for people as well. So expanding an empire. During the early 1800s, Napoleon Bonaparte also expanded the French Empire across Europe. Now, these conflicts will become known as the Napoleonic Wars, and they lasted from 1804 until 1812. Now, Napoleon was a very skilled military leader, and he used quick movements and planned effectively on the battlefield. Once he won many of these battles, or the French army won many of these battles, he incorporated many parts of Europe into the French Empire, including the Netherlands, Belgium, and parts of Italy and Germany. You can see here the dark green, I'm trying to highlight for you here, the dark green parts were part of the French kingdom, which were part of the French Empire, and then the lighter green parts, like Spain, here's Spain here, they will become kind of like satellite parts, or kind of like colonial kind of areas of the French Empire. But again, all this green area, you can kind of see how much the French Empire began to expand and grow under Napoleon. Now, in these colonial places, or places that Napoleon was taking charge of, he placed his family and friends in charge of these certain areas, such as his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, and he placed Joseph Bonaparte as King of Spain. Even though this might have sounded good at the time for Napoleon and others, this is going to lead to the collapse of the French Empire under Napoleon, which we'll talk about later. So Great Britain and the Continental System. The only European country to remain outside of Napoleon's empire was Great Britain. Now, Napoleon prepared to invade Great Britain in 1805, but was stopped by this gentleman here, whose picture you see, Admiral Horatio Nelson, at the Battle of Trafalgar, and I'm trying my best to pronounce that properly. Instead of invasion, Napoleon decides to cut off, or wants to try to cut off, Great Britain economically. So Napoleon sought to cut off Great Britain economically from the rest of Europe, and this was known as the Continental System. So because Napoleon has control of a good portion of Europe on the continent, he closes off ports in Europe to Great Britain, and Napoleon thinks that this will kind of starve, quote unquote, Great Britain into submission and into surrendering to France. However, this conflict between Great Britain and France will lead to each side seizing neutral ships, such as, for an example, American ships that were going over to Great Britain and France, and they will seize American ships, especially British will seize American ships, because they think they're trading with the French, and this will actually lead to a lot of problems between the United States and Great Britain in terms of the War of 1812, which you may know something about already, but this will lead to a lot of conflict between Great Britain and France and others due to the Continental System planning by Napoleon. Now, the impact of Napoleon across Europe. Napoleon is unable to, or was unable to, conquer Great Britain under the Continental System. However, the French armies under Napoleon do spread the revolution and these ideas of Napoleon across Europe. We'll see a bunch of liberal reforms and ideas help put in place, these liberal reforms and ideas helped put in place revolutionary ideas across Europe. And titles and privileges of nobility and the church will end as well, these privileges as well. And we'll also see a lot of reforms under the Napoleonic Code that will impact Europeans as well, such as freedom and equality. And as we talk about more nationalism and more revolutions in France later on here in the year, a lot of these ideas from Napoleon will help start a lot of those revolutions. Alright, so our closure. What changes occurred under new leadership in France? Think about the reforms Napoleon was putting in place in terms of government in France, such as schools and the economy, and the Napoleonic Code, and also how did Napoleon help grow the French Empire across Europe as well. Alright, hope you have a great rest of your day or night. Try your best on the questions that follow, and I hope to see and talk to you all soon. Take care. Bye-bye.